Howdy, gang. It is Monday, and I'm getting some loot back here. Get rid of that. Maybe. Got rid of it? Yep, I think we did. Ha! Nip that in the bud right away. Anyway, it is Monday, gang, and I don't know, maybe you spent your weekend watching the Olympics and you were being thrilled by athletic achievements in South Korea. Or then again, you may have been spending a lot of time shoveling snow, or maybe you were like me and did quite a bit of both. I don't know. I can't tell you. All I can tell you for certain is the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Jeff McAleer once again, and I am the host here of the Daily Dope, as well as the Grand Poobah of thegaminggang.com. Today is Monday, February 12th, 2018, and I have to say we got shellacked by some snow in the Chicago area, so there was a lot of shoveling that was going on this weekend. Ugh. Thankfully, I don't think we're going to run across much snow for the next week or so. At least they're not forecasting any. But I guess it was really strange. According to the news here, they were talking about that there was snow for 8 straight days in the Chicago area for the 3rd time in recorded weather history. Pretty bizarre. Anyway, welcome aboard. You may notice if you watch the show, I'm a little further. Hey, Russell Higgins chiming in. Hello, Russell. Thanks for joining me today. Sup, Jeff. As you can tell, I was doing a lot of shoveling. I did make some changes to what's behind me, kind of so I'm not like right up in your face constantly. So I wanted to get a little more real estate out here. I am streaming today on Twitch as well as YouTube. Pretty sure we're doing okay with Twitch stream today. Not sure. I know there was some issues with audio being in sync. It happens randomly, and I thought maybe it was because I was actually streaming to both platforms, but that wasn't the case. So, Russell, I know you're watching. If the audio's out of sync, please let me know. Should be okay. So, I don't know. We will find out. So today I will be reviewing Rail Raiders Infinite from Soda Pop Miniatures and Ninja Division. So that is coming up. Let me just put this on over here. Get this out of the way. Just kind of show off the box here. And what have I got cooking the rest of the week? Well, tomorrow I am going to be reviewing Darkest Night. Hey, as I pick this puppy up. Darkest Night 2nd edition from my good friends over at Victory Point Games. Yes, that's right. This is a big box, heavy box, and it is jam-packed with fantasy board game goodness. Then on Wednesday, those of you out there who watch the show, there's a lot of war gamers who tune in on Wednesday for my War Game Wednesdays. I have the Wing Leader Expansion Blitz 1939-1942 that I will be announcing the winner for. So if you still want to get into the running, you have to check out my review of This War of Mine. You have to check out that video, or you can also check out my How to Play Twilight Struggle video, and you can find out how you can get into the running. Then also on Wednesday, I am going to take a look at what we find in Space Empire's Replicators from my good pals over at GMT Games. This is the 2nd expansion for Space Empire's 4X. And it does add a new faction. I believe it adds an extra player too, so we're going to find out. Anyway, all right, so there is some news today, and I will point out that, unfortunately, I couldn't find a whole lot of images for some of the news that was floating out there. There were a few news pieces I saw and I was like, wow, that's interesting. That's coming soon. And then I couldn't find even a single image to include with that. So most of the news today most of the news items only have maybe 1-2 images at best. So anyway, let us jump into the news, because on Friday I had to share some bad news for board gamers out there, as Mayfair Games announced that after 36 years, they were closing their doors. And they had sold all of their assets to Asmodee. I hadn't been sure if Asmodee picked up everything from them. I'm still not sure if they picked up all the rights to the various different designs or not. But I do know that Mayfair Games did sell all of their assets to Asmodee. North America, I believe, is what they officially said. So that was sad. I found that to be very sad. So let's talk about some good news in the gaming industry, because yes, Stronghold Games has moved into their new home in Florida, and they have revealed a brand new logo as they settle in. Here's some of the dope from the Stronghold Games press release. Stronghold Games has moved its office from Somerset, New Jersey to Boynton Beach, Florida. The office is now in a temporary location in this city and will move to its permanent location in Boynton Beach, Florida by the end of March. Stronghold Games is also introducing a new logo for 2018 and beyond. Designed by Bill Bricker, this logo reimagines the original logo, which has been used by Stronghold Games since the company's inception in 2009. The new Stronghold Games logo retains the look of a looming castle, as well as the bold red and black colors, both of which have been a hallmark of the company. The new Stronghold Games logo is a more modern, cleaner design. This is an important moment in Stronghold Games history as we exit our most successful year, said Stephen Bonacore, president of Stronghold Games. With the continuing growth of the company, it is time to add new talent with both an eye toward diversity and insider/outsider industry knowledge. We mark this moment as well with a new logo, a new representation of Stronghold Games. Stronghold also announced a couple new hires for the company as well. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about that. Well, actually, any detail about that. But you can find this news over at the Stronghold Games website. So I was like, yay, hey, Steven and the team for Stronghold are finally settling in. I guess maybe Steven decided he had had just about enough of those New Jersey winters. I don't blame him, that's for sure. I do also want to point out that back in the day, back at Origins last year, my best friend Elliot Miller over at voiceofe.com, his check did clear, so I'm going to talk about him a lot this week. I'm kidding. There's no check. Anyway, everybody, if you watch the show, you know I mention Elliot all the time. And Elliot and I had been looking at joining together, teaming up again to do a podcast. And when we had talked to Steven, we told Steven, hey, you're going to be our first guest that we'll bring on board for the podcast. Well, because of scheduling conflicts and everything else, Elliot and I have just not been able to get on the same page as far as doing a podcast. I don't see that happening in the future either, because I'm doing this Monday through Friday. I like to have a little time to myself on the weekends, but the offer is still out there for Steven to actually come on the Daily Dope. We'll set something up through Skype, and I would like Steven to actually be my first interview on the new weekday show. Well, it's not new anymore. It's been around a couple of months now, hasn't it? So, yes, so some good news for Stronghold Games. And boy, I tell you, I remember back at Origins when Survive Escape from Atlantis was first arriving, and that was, I think, the second title from Stronghold. Might have been the first. Back then, boy, you sure didn't see this coming with all the gaming goodness that Stronghold releases each and every year. All right, moving right along, Cryptozoic Entertainment has revealed some new titles that'll be coming out, and they're going to be previewing these at the New York Toy Fair later on this week. And I've got the dope. In fact, I've got kind of two news items because I broke them up by pretty much what they're about. So first off, I've got some news about 3 new titles that all have to do with Rick and Morty. They're all set in the Rick and Morty universe. Rick and Morty, the Ricks Must Be Crazy multiverse game is for 2 to 4 players, and the 2 to 4 players will take on the roles of Rick, Morty, Zeep, and Kyle as they introduce power-making technology to different worlds and then try to get that power before their opponents. Based on the Rick and Morty episode, The Ricks Must Be Crazy, thus the name, gameplay takes place in 4 verses with unique attributes: the Rickverse, Microverse, Miniverse, and Teenyverse. Players spend actions to build power supplies and contraptions and move to different verses. At the end of each round, power generates from the bottom verse up, and players utilize it to play one-shot abilities, use character abilities, and power up their contraptions. Then there's Rick and Morty, the Pickle Rick game. This intense 1 to 2 player game is based on the hugely popular Pickle Rick episode of Adult Swim's Rick and Morty. One player plays as Pickle Rick as he tries to escape a heavily armed compound, while the other players take on the roles of both the Russians and Jaguar as they try to stop him. The Pickle Rick player uses weapons cards to dole out damage and air vents to get out of jams as he or she tries to get to the rooftop. The game includes both Pickle Rick and Jaguar miniatures that are moved across a dynamic board made up of tiles that are constantly being added, rotated, and flipped. Adding to the off-the-wall fun is the game's packaging. It looks like a pickle. I wish I had an image to share to show you that Pickle Rick. Then there's Rick and Morty, the Rick Shank Redemption deck building game. This 2 to 4 player sequel to Rick and Morty Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind deck building game features a set of council cards that cause players to vote to enact new rules, dramatic one-time effects, and other mysterious situations. Access tokens give players votes and chances to devalue the Galactic Federation currency from 1 to 0. The game exudes off-the-wall Rick and Morty art and gameplay, even including, wait for it, a Szechuan sauce card. I have to be honest, I have not played any of the Rick and Morty games which Cryptozoic has released in the past, because I think they already have 2 or 3. So I don't really have anything to add about these 3 new announcements. Currently, there happens to be no release date info or MSRP info for the trio of Rick and Morty titles. Also announced by Cryptozoic is more DC deck building news, and I've got the dope on that. Yes, if you're a fan of the DC deck building game, you'll be interested in Rebirth, the latest entry in the DC deck building game series, as it introduces movement using 8 Mighty Meeples wooden figures, including Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Aquaman. I'm going to take a guess. We'll probably see Cyborg and possibly Green Lantern added to that mix. Don't know for sure. The game features both competitive and cooperative modes, offering 2 distinctive ways to play. In both modes, villains do not go into a player's deck when defeated, but instead grant a one-time reward. In competitive play, defeated villains give players victory points and then go under their superhero cards. They can even be used to bribe rivals for various favors. Then there's the DC deck building game expansion, Crisis. The latest Crisis expansion for the DC deck building game series introduces the keyword Unity for ongoing cards that get better as more teammates have them in play. The pack focuses on the Teen Titans and includes 6 superheroes from the Titans, original members of the group who are now all grown up and have something to prove. Another fresh twist to gameplay comes in the form of personal crisis cards, which may only directly affect one character, but can still take down the whole team if players don't work together to solve the problem. As with the Rick and Morty games, Cryptozoic has not revealed any launch dates or MSRPs on these two new DC deck building titles. Once again, I have not played any of the DC deck building games. I heard they're okay. I mean, I don't know. Can't tell you. Really can't tell you anything about it. I have played Marvel, the Marvel game from Upper Deck. Yeah, so Legendary. Well, I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, as far as, lighter deck builders go. I will point out that there's a new standalone expansion which is arriving from the Brotherwise Games company, and it's part of the Boss Monster series. And I've got the dope about that because Boss Monster Rise of the Mini Bosses is on its way. Well, it's a little ways off, but it will be available. Boss Monster Rise of the Mini Bosses is a large expansion set for Boss Monster that can be played on its own or combined with earlier Boss Monster sets and expansions. Rise of the Mini Bosses adds a new mechanic to the game, which allows players to collect coins by using their rooms and spells. Coins can then be used to upgrade rooms or hire the new mini bosses. Mini bosses provide permanent bonuses to improve the player's dungeon rooms. Also included are new bosses, spells, and heroes. The 165 card deck, I should say 150 card expansion, it's not a deck, it's just all the different cards, will come with 35 coin tokens. All right, I need a sip. I need a sip here. Let's take that from the top. The 165 card expansion will come with 35 coin tokens, a 24-page rulebook, and a quick start sheet. Boss Monster Rise of the Mini Bosses is for 2 to 4 players, ages 13 and up, and plays in around 30 minutes. It will carry an MSRP of $24.95 when it arrives July 11th. Okay, so thankfully, I have played Boss Monster. I played the original version. I haven't played any expansions. I got a big kick out of it. I love the sense of humor it's got. And then there's all these sort of little Easter eggs all hidden throughout the game that have to do with various different video games and even pop culture. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And it kind of does the whole dungeon keeper thing where that you're trying to kill heroes who are coming into your dungeon. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. You should check out the review if you have not checked out Boss Monster in the past. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll luck out and get a chance to take a look at this new standalone expansion. All right, so some family fun game news. And it's probably coming from a source that most people wouldn't expect. It's Cool Mini or Not, because they have released the family-friendly deduction game 13 Clues, originally available in Italian from Da Vinci Games. And it's now coming to the North American market, and I have the dope. The year is 1899, and London is experiencing a crime wave. To help with their caseload, Scotland Yard has called in some of the best detectives around. Each is assigned their own mystery to solve using the clues at hand. In 13 Clues, players take on the role of Scotland Yard detectives trying to solve their own unique mystery. They must identify the culprit, the scene of the crime, and the weapon that was used. They must collect and spend magnifying glass tokens to ask questions of the other players, eliminating options from their mystery as they narrow in on closing the case. The first one to correctly solve their mystery is the winner. 13 Clues is for 2 to 6 players, ages 8 and up. It will play in around half an hour and does carry an MSRP of $29.99. And as mentioned before, it is available now. I know some folks have emailed me asking, do I hate CMoN? Do I hate Cool Mini or not? Because I completely avoided talking about the hate Kickstarter? No. Obviously enough, I'm sharing a news piece about one of their family games. No, I have nothing against Cool Mini or not. Nothing. It's just that game just was not my cup of tea from the looks of it, and I am familiar with some of the source material it's based on. I just was like, no thanks. So I'm making it up to them. I'm sharing the news about about their family-friendly game, 13 Clues. All right, I did want to mention there is a new horror-themed supplement that is on Drive-Thru RPG, and of course, I dig horror stuff. And the supplement is for Mithras, or really basically any D100 sort of RPG, say like Chaosium's basic role-playing. And the supplement is entitled After the Vampire Wars, and it has arrived from the design mechanism, and I have the dope. The shadows have always been with us, and so have those who dwell within. The sorcerers, the fae, the lycanthropes, and darkest of them all, the vampires. All have secretly lived alongside humanity, veiled from mortal view for millennia. But now they are exposed to the light, and the supernatural walks among us. Early in the 21st century, the US government discovered the existence of vampires and sought to eradicate them. Thus began the Vampire Wars, killing thousands, and ended only by the triggering of a nuclear warhead. And now, after the Vampire Wars, the world must adjust to a new reality, one where vampires openly walk the streets, where lycanthropes prowl the urban centers, and where sorcerers tout their services from strip malls. I said strip malls, not strip clubs. In After the Vampire Wars, you play the creatures of the shadows, seers, fae, lycanthropes, and of course, vampires. Each species has its own special powers and abilities, and some possess formidable magical and psychic talents. After the Vampire Wars adapts the Mithras rules to the contemporary era and the urban fantasy genre. It supports a wide range of campaign types, from gritty noir to fast and deadly cinematic action, from whimsical urban fantasy to passion-fueled paranormal romance. Perfect for Valentine's Day. After the Vampire Wars takes Mithras into a new territory and does it with style. Fully compatible with the entire Mithras range, After the Vampire Wars creates a fascinating alternate universe where nothing is quite as it seems, and where the supernatural struggles for control with the mundane. Take your first steps into the shadow world and discover life after the Vampire Wars. I do have a bit of a video that I wanted to share, because this does look like a pretty cool supplement, especially for those who kind of dig the whole Vampire the Masquerade sort of vibe to the game without having to get bogged down in all the vampire products that are out there. So let's take a peek. The video's about 3.5 minutes.
The shadows have always been with us, and so have those who dwell in them. The psychics, the sorcerers, the fae, the lycanthropes, and darkest of all, the vampires. All have secretly lived alongside humanity, veiled from mortal view. But now that secret is exposed, the supernatural is very real and it walks among us. Early in the 21st century, the US government discovered the existence of vampires and, in 2008, was determined to eradicate them. So was triggered the terrible Vampire War. Thousands died, entire cities were held hostage, and a tentative peace was forged only after the triggering of a nuclear warhead. Now the Vampire War is over, and the shadows are exposed. The world must adjust to a new reality, one where vampires openly run nightclubs, where lycanthropes prowl the urban centres, where the fae and their strange mutations roam free, and where sorcerers tout their services from the storefronts of strip malls. After the Vampire Wars is a setting for Mithras, where supernatural creatures and magical powers have suddenly been revealed to humanity. In this setting, you play the creatures of the shadows, seers, fae, lycanthropes, shifters, and of course, vampires. Characters can be young, lesser vampires, ancient and deadly elder vampires, feral werewolves, mysterious shifters, exotic half-fae, or even ordinary humans touched by magic. Each species has its own abilities. Vampires can compel with a glance, lycanthropes can transform into deadly feral forms, half-fae have a multitude of mutations and powers, and shifters can project their consciousness beyond their bodies and feed upon emotions. After the Vampire Wars supports a wide range of stories, from gritty film noir to fast and deadly cinematic adventure, from whimsical urban fantasy to complex and jealousy-filled paranormal romance. After the Vampire Wars adapts Mythras to the contemporary era and the urban fantasy genre. Rules are included for vehicles and firearms, and character creation dives deep into the supernatural species, offering new powers and abilities for the urban fantasy setting. The Mythras sorcery rules have been modified, including new options for ritual magic, new spells and enchantments, and new magical colleges. After the Vampire Wars takes Mythras into new territory and does it with style. Fully compatible with the whole Mythras range, and especially the Luther Arkwright setting, After the Vampire Wars is a fantastic addition to the Mythras collection. So take your first glimpse of the world to come and see for yourself what life is like after the Vampire Wars.
Pretty interesting. Looks pretty cool. After the Vampire Wars is 152 pages of horror-filled gaming goodness. It's available right now at Drive-Thru RPG in PDF for $12.99. If you'd like a softcover edition, you can snag that through the Design Mechanism website for $24.95, and that will also include the PDF. Good deal. Good deal. All right, last item. I don't really have anything set up for it, but HBO has revealed the premiere date for the second season of Westworld. And honestly, we don't have all that long to wait because it will be April 22nd. Westworld was certainly a show that I have to say I was extremely pleasantly surprised because I thought, what? Really? Boy, I'll tell you, it was one of my favorite shows of 2017. It is excellent. And you know, the funny thing is, right now is an excellent time. It's like a golden age of television, and not just for great series, but for stuff that geeks, you know, really dig. I have to say, The Terror, which is coming from AMC in late March, looks really, really well done. I actually have read the book, but it's been years because that, if I remember right, that book came out about a dozen years ago or so. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, we've got Amazon's The Man in the High Castle, third season, which unfortunately we don't have any word yet on when we should be seeing that. Rats. But yeah, there's just so many awesome shows. The Expanse. Love The Expanse. I think that's a fantastic show. I try to turn everybody I know into, onto that so they can check that out. So it's really, really a good time to be a science fiction, even in some ways a fantasy fan. Of course, you got Game of Thrones and various spin-offs that HBO is planning for that. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So I can't wait to see the new season of Westworld on HBO. Although it's funny, I think we're getting spoiled by Netflix and Hulu and Amazon when they come out with a series and boom, all the episodes are out there. And then we have to turn around and we watch like HBO and it's like, I gotta wait till next week, find out what happens next. Kind of funny. But yes, it's a great time to be a fan of science fiction and fantasy. There's tons of it available out there. Oh, plus, Star Trek, the new Star Trek, I like it. To me, it's not really Trek, but I do enjoy it, just on its own accord. And then the Orville, amazingly enough, I think the comedy kind of falls flat, but that really has more of a Star Trek, like Next Generation vibe than the new Star Trek does. So I dug that too. All right. Anyway, I had a couple items in the mailbag. They're kind of detailed, kind of asking me about certain genres of games that I really dig. So I think I'll save those for later on this week, because I do have the review for Rail Raiders Infinite from Soda Pop Miniatures and Ninja Division. So we're gonna pop on over. Let's take a look at the other camera here, and I will start taking a look at this. Now, I will want to point out that Rail Raiders Infinite is designed by David Freeman. It is for 2 to 4 players, plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. It's for ages 14 and up, and it carries an MSRP of $59.95. So now let's switch on over here. All right, so as I mentioned, we're taking a look at Rail Raiders Infinite. And, well, I'm going to kind of walk you through a bit of the game. I'm not going to go to every single detail about the game, but this is not a review I've been looking forward to. But first off, you get a slew of chibi design style miniatures. And I really have to say, I dig these miniatures quite a lot. I thought these minis are really, really nicely done. And I know Soda Pop is famous for doing their Super Dungeon Explorer. I think they've got a ninja game. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but I think that also utilizes the chibi style minis. And these, I can see these painting up really, really nicely. The plastic is solid. It's not like some of the plastic minis we see where, and I'm not going to like push on stuff because I'll break it, but very, very solid. So yes, that is one of the characters here. This is Josie Oakley that we're taking a peek at. Then we've got Huckleberry. Pretty cool here. And I have to laugh because I just get a kick out of how this character has his little fan. And I know when I did the unboxing, it's sort of like, oh goodness, oh my. It's like, here, have a face full of lead, boom. Because she's got the fan and the gun. Now this is a science fiction kind of Western mashup. And what's going on is your characters, each player is going to get to select their character. You're going to roll dice to see who picks first. And there are 6 available characters. I know in the Kickstarter they had a bunch of stretch goals and some add-ons, things like that. So this is the retail edition, so there are 6 characters. Each of the characters has their own little card, and it's going to tell you what their special ability happens to be. So we've got Josie and Huckleberry. I just got this kind of set up as a 2-player game. And then on the back, it's going to tell you, so it's going to give you a little background, a little flavor text about the characters. So in a 4-player game, you'll be utilizing 4 of the 6 characters. 3-player game, 3 of the 6. 2-player game, 2 of the 6, obviously enough. So the premise of the game is that these characters are banditos, and they're actually robbing this interstellar galactic express. And I do have the cards of the train set up, but normally you would have, here's the caboose, and you would have these 2, then these 2 over here, and then you would add the locomotive to the end, because space is usually at kind of a premium here. I just set it up where I've got the front cars just below here. Just so you know, it's supposed to be a straight line. They're not supposed to be on top of each other. Now, defending the train are these law bots. So you've got deputies, then you got sheriffs, and then you've got marshals. And you're going to randomly be determining who's defending these cars on the train. You got a high noon deck. This high noon deck is determined by how many players. So out of the deck of cards, and it's a pretty good sized deck, You're actually going to draw 8 cards for each player. You're going to set that here. Then you got a loot deck. There's all the various loot items or money items. And then you've got the Law and Order deck, which you'll draw from to find out exactly who is guarding these cards. And there's little extra events and things like that, special abilities for the law bots that will come up in here. There is a timing mechanic to the game, and it is your high noon deck. So once a player draws the last high noon deck, that's going to activate the last turn of the game. Everybody's going to be able to take their turn, and once everybody's taken the turn, effectively what it is, the train is pulling into the station, and of course, these raiders have to hop off before it gets to the station because they figure, okay, well, there's going to be way too many law bots to fight, so they don't want to be captured or arrested. So to begin the game, each of the players will have 5 dice, and these dice are kind of poker dice. And they go anywhere 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace. And the resolution mechanic throughout the game is effectively rolling your 5 dice to try to put together the best hand. Now, amazingly enough, this was an excellent roll because I have 4 queens and a 10. So yeah, I would say that's a pretty good hand. I wish I had money in a poker game on this. Each of the players will also have a little reference card here that's going to tell them, okay, so what do these law bots do? And it also shows you the hand rank. So as you can see, pretty impressive, those 4 of a kind. It's a rank 7. So you go anywhere from rank 1 to rank 8, which is 5 of a kind. First thing I'm going to mention is I don't understand why a lot of games that have some sort of a Western motif feel the need that they have to throw in some sort of a poker mechanic into the game. Now, sometimes it works. For an example, with Tiny Epic Western. It works in Tiny Epic Western because it's not a real critical portion of the game. The more critical portion of the game is actually in your worker placement, but there is just a little 3-card poker mechanic to the game, and I think it's fine. It works well. Other games seemingly just have to, like I said, I don't understand why there's this need, because it's a Western theme of some sort, that they have to include poker. Because one of the things I always like to point out is poker was not as popular as people think it was in the West, in the Old West. Faro was the big game that people played a lot of. And you really never hear anybody incorporating Faro mechanics into their games. But whatever. So, to start off with, the players are not actually on this train, so they have to hop on the train. And like I said, I've just got this set up for 2 players. So we've got these 2 characters here, and you start off, you're going to put their mini on their card because they're considered off of the train. They're not on the train yet. So to begin, each of the players can decide, are they going to just enter onto the caboose, which is the last car, which they don't have to roll or do anything for to get on that? Or do they want to try to roll to get in one of these cars ahead of the caboose? And depending on where that car is located, will tell you what kind of rank. Remember, we've got the hand rank key on the card that they can jump onto. If they do not successfully roll, then they're considered still being off the train. So when everything starts to happen, they're not going to really get a turn to do anything because they're not on the train yet. Once your characters are on the train, and let's say both players decide, hey, you know what? we're just going to enter on the caboose because we don't want to be sitting there twiddling our thumbs while everybody else is blasting away at these law bots and trying to loot the goodies out of the train. So that, let's say they both decide they're going to jump on there. And Josie's special ability is you may re-roll one die during opposed searches. I'll get to that in a moment. Huckleberry is during a showdown, you may change one of your dice to an ace after all re-rolls are resolved. So to begin a turn, each of the players are going to roll their 5 dice and try to assemble the best hand from these dice that they can. So as an example here, we've got a pair of aces, queen high. So let's say that's Huckleberry's roll. Then we've got Josie rolls, and Josie's able to put together 2 pair. Queens and tens, ace high. So Josie becomes the first player. And Josie will now decide she will have 3 actions that she may perform. So the first thing you're going to do is, because Josie becomes the dealer, so the dealer gets his token, sits in front of them. They're going to draw a high noon card, and the high noon card is going to tell you some sort of effect that's going to maybe be in play for that round, or it may tell you now you're going to discard some cards off of the high noon deck, which I do like this mechanic to the game where you never know exactly how long the game may play out. So you're always trying to score as many double dollars as you possibly can, because the whole premise of the game is your raiders are going to jump off the train before it gets to the station, and whoever has the most double dollars is going to be declared the winner. So this card here says Impulse Throttle. Discard the top 2 cards of the high noon deck. All right, so there we go. We've got that. We're going to... Holy cow, there's 3 in a row? That is really, really bizarre. Because this deck has been shuffled up a lot. All right, so whatever. So for an example, for in this turn, so there's really nothing new that's has to be considered for the turn. So Josie decides, okay, so one of my actions, I'm going to move. So Josie moves onto the car, and these train cars are actually selected randomly. So you don't know what car is what. We're going to flip this over. It's going to tell us this is a passenger car. So each of these cars may have some sort of special ability as well. Strangely enough, had something weird pop up on my screen there. Some ad for a program I've got. So it says, when a raider starts their turn here and this car is face up, one of the lowest ranking law bots here moves 1 card toward the locomotive, which would be off in this direction. Well, Josie's not starting her turn there. Josie's starting her turn in the caboose. So she moves in, and it's going to tell us, okay, so we're going to draw 2 Law and Order cards to see who's actually defending, and then we're going to take 2 loot tokens. And these are the loot tokens. They have a number of 1, 2, or 3 on them, and you're supposed to have them all face down. And then you kind of mix them up. And that's going to determine how many loot cards you will draw when you take a look at the number on these once you decide to search the car. So let's draw our 2 law bots. So we've got a sheriff, so you're going to put 1 sheriff. Got the sheriff is over here. So got a sheriff in the car. Take the second one. Covering fire, put 1 deputy on the card. On the car, I should say. Then you'll see some of these cards will say grit. And grit means that it's some special ability that's for the law bots. So it says covering fire, grit. Raiders on this car can't move if there are any law bots on this car. All right, so we know we've got a sheriff and we've got a deputy. So let's grab one of the deputies. Okay, so those are the forces opposing Josie in this car. And what you're going to do then is one of the actions is having a showdown. Okay, so showdown, you're going to have the player rolling their dice for their character, and then you're going to have another player rolling the dice for the law bots. In a game where you have more than 2 players, a player whose character isn't in this car, isn't part of this, should usually roll the dice. Sometimes all the characters are in one car. So if that's the case, then if the dealer is not the player who's actually taking their actions, then the person who's the dealer should roll the dice. So Josie would roll her dice. The law bots are going to roll their dice. So we've got Josie gets a pair of queens and a pair of tens. So she's got 2 pair, queen high with a 6. The law bots get 2 queens, a 10, a jack, and a king. Now, what the sheriff allows, taking a look at the law bots here, it says, because all the law bots fight as a team, if you have one sheriff, then they may re-roll one of their dice in a fight. So we know we've got a sheriff here. If they have a marshal, who is less likely for you to run across, then you would actually get to add a die. So here, you figure, okay, well, they get to re-roll one of their dice. They're hoping to get another queen, or possibly a jack or a king. They get a queen. So it's 3 queens. Josie's special ability does not allow her to re-roll dice in a showdown. So what happens here is the law bots win, and Jessie gets knocked back a car. There are no hit points or anything like that. The raiders don't get killed or anything. It's just you're constantly being pushed out of cars, or you can be actually thrown off the train, and you're kind of back to that whole starting point of, okay, do I climb on the caboose, or do I try to jump on another car? All right, so that would be, she had 2 actions. She's got 1 action left. You can pass. You don't have to necessarily take an action. But, for an example, Josie says, okay, I'm going to move once again. So she's back into the car. Then it's Huckleberry's turn. Huckleberry's going to flip over. Hot lead flying. Add an additional die to showdowns this turn. Okay. So we're going to leave that out. Let's tell us, okay, so this turn, and the turn is only the player's turn. So it's a round, and the round is made up of player turns. So we know he's got 3 actions. So one of the actions, he's going to move. Then he's going to get into a showdown. And he's going to attack the law bots. Now, the other player, if there is another player who is in the same car as you, they can decide, hey, you know what? I want in on this showdown too. And they can also roll dice. So for an example here, we'll say yes. Huckleberry rolls his dice. Lawbots roll their dice. Oh, it's a full house for the Lawbots. Got 3 jacks and 2 queens. Get an extra die for Huckleberry. So we'll say it's a king. So we got king. So we got a full house here too. Unfortunately, it's a 10 king as opposed by a jack queen. So Huckleberry would have lost. He's pushed out. So what can he do now? Of course, he can use his 3rd action, go back in. Actually, I should say Josie was getting in on the action. I highly doubt Josie's going to get it. No. Not even close. Okay, so, and then you're just rolling these dice continually. So what'll happen is if you defeat the law bots, you remove the lower rated law bot from the car. So for an example, in the showdown, if there was a winner, if one of the raiders won that showdown, then they would eliminate one of the law bots. So it goes deputy, then sheriff, then marshal. If another player was involved in that showdown, and let's say, for an example, Josie had actually rolled the best hand of dice, then she would actually remove the law bot. You get money. It's right on the card. Tells you. You get $1 double dollar for a deputy, you get 2 for a sheriff, you get 3 for the marshal. So in that situation, then Josie would get the $1 double dollar. But then the thing is, if there's other characters in the car, you can force them into another car. So you can move them ahead, you can move them back. So you can push other characters out when you jump in to a showdown that's going on, that's not even on your turn. Another action you've got is you can search the car. So remember, we've got these 2 loot tokens here. So we've got these 2 loot tokens. You can use your 1 action, if you're in the car, to search. Now, there's nothing in the rules that we ran across saying that, well, you can't search the car if you've got law bots still in the train car. I don't know, kind of weird, right? So the law bots are going to be like, okay, we're shooting at you, and then, no, we'll wait. We'll wait. Oh, Russell Higgins is saying, this is the game that ultimately made me swear off Kickstarter. Well, Russell's probably going to agree with me on this review when I get to it, to my final thoughts of the game. So, let's say, for an example, that Huckleberry was able to finish off his attacks, and he still had, there's no more law bots here, and he decides he wants to search, see what the loot is there. If there's any other character in that train car, then they can challenge you and say, no, I'm going to stop you from taking a look at what might be on these loot tokens. And once again, you're rolling your dice in a showdown to see, can you actually search for the loot and get the loot or not? And it's funny because, okay, so if the other player beats your roll, let's say you're the phasing player and you're using that last action to try to see, hey, what's this loot token? I want to look at the loot token here. There's 2 of them. And the other player beats you, you get nothing. You don't get to do anything. And it's just really rinse and repeat from there. So you're constantly rolling dice. You're rolling these dice. Now, granted, you'll run across loot, and some of the loot will give you weapons. Some of the loot will give you extra money. It's all very, very random, of course, and it is very, very possible for one player to be getting the loot tokens. So for an example, that says 1. So they would get to draw 1 loot card, and they get to select that item. So it says kinetic deflector, and it tells you what that equipment does. You can have 1 piece of equipment active during any of your showdowns, and you decide before you take your turn which piece of equipment, which weapon, whatever, what have you, you're utilizing. So for an example here, okay, so that would have been another 1. But say for an example it was a 2. Well, then the player gets to draw 2 loot cards, pick one that they want, and then they discard the rest. There's 3. There's tokens for 3 loot cards. And same thing, you would draw 3 loot cards, you would pick the one you want to keep, and then discard the other 2. One other thing I should point out is, in a showdown, if you force the other player out of the car into another car, and they have more money than you do, more double dollars than you do, then you can actually take one of their dollars. You take one of their. Now, if they have fewer double dollars than you do, then nothing happens. They don't lose any cash. So then you'll just continue going through the different cars. Whoops, that's upside down. So for an example, the stock car would have had 2 loot tokens and 3 Law and Order cards. And then it says, raiders on this car roll an additional die when they take an action to show down law bots. Because you can show down the law bots, you can show down other players, and then you can also get involved in the showdown where it's multiple players getting into a battle with the law bots. So for an example, we got a high-class sleeper that would have had 4 of these for the Law and Order cards, as well as the 6 loot tokens. But this whole looting thing, and you know, it's funny because the description of Rail Raiders Infinite talks about, well, you can play competitively or you can play cooperatively. But they really never focus on, well, how do you play cooperatively? Unless you decide, well, hey, I'm just going to throw this rule out. I'm going to throw that rule out. We're not going to play it this way. But that's really up to the players themselves, as opposed to what's in the rule book. Because in the rule book, it's pretty much effectively, it's every character for themselves. Which thematically is very strange because, what, all 4, up to 4 of these banditos decide, yeah, this is the train we're going to jump individually. And they're certainly not in a team, because if they were in a team, all the shenanigans with them fighting amongst themselves, and that I should say, would really defeat the purpose of them being a team in the first place. Anyway, so you just continue going up and down, back and forth, squabbling amongst yourselves, fighting the different law bots, until you finally draw your final high noon card, and the game mercifully comes to an end. Because I have to say, and we played this twice. We did not play this 3 times. And the first time we played, everybody at the table was sort of like, that's all that's to this game? Really? The rest of the gang kind of give you an idea of what some of, well, I won't get into like some of the really negative comments about the game that some of the other members of the gang mentioned while we were playing. But one was, okay, this whole getting pushed out of cars and then moving back into cars is pretty ridiculous. And yes, I kind of agree with them on that, because there is no movement grid or anything like that. You're just moving. One movement takes you from one car to another car. The whole fact of there's nothing that I saw in the rules that says, oh, you can't start searching the car if there's still law bots there. Like I said, I didn't see anything. I have not like sat there and passionately studied the rule book, because really you're looking at a grand total of 3 pages for the rules, telling you, and then there's an example of play. So I never ran across that, and we were like, I don't know. I was kind of like, the impression was it didn't make a whole lot of sense as far as the mechanics. Now, these miniatures are really cool, and it kind of stinks that this is the first time I've had an opportunity to review anything from Soda Pop Miniatures, because I've heard Super Dungeon Explorer is a pretty fun game. Granted, I've heard it's kind of got some problems to it, but I heard it's, yeah, pretty engaging, and there's loads of different stuff for it. So, unfortunately, I am reviewing Rail Raiders Infinite, and personally, it's kind of a stinker. It really is. And people know I do not like giving negative reviews out, simply because I understand, you know, people work on this stuff. I'm not trying to take like food out of people's mouths. What I would take a guess at, and I know Russell Higgins is kind of chiming in here. Yeah, exactly. Okay, yes, that's my thoughts exactly. So Russell is saying it's not really a game. If you like rolling dice, you're just doing that a lot. Components have potential, but the game isn't there. That's how we felt. We felt that, you know, these miniatures are really cool. And you get quite a few of them. You get the 6 characters, you get 7 deputies, you get 5 of the sheriffs, you get 2 of the marshals. So we're like, yeah, these minis are cool. And you could tell that some of the players were kind of like completely just zoning out on playing the game after a certain point because they were just kind of messing around with the minis, looking at the miniatures, going, oh yeah, hey, you know, these are pretty neat. The train cars, yeah, nice stock, everything, yeah. I mean, it's not as if this was cheaply produced. I mean, the card stock for the different cards is nice. It's just there's no game here. It's almost as if the folks at Soda Pop Miniatures were like, hey, you know, we gotta get an idea for a new range of these chibi minis, and let's do kind of a science fiction Western sort of theme. And then as a kind of afterthought, somebody thought, well, yeah, I guess we should come up with some sort of a game. It's really not a game. This is just a super undercooked design. I don't want to say that it's completely broken because it could be fixed. It's just the point is, do you want to go through the effort of creating your own rules for it? I don't know. I can't tell you. That's completely up to you. But as far as Rail Raiders Infinite, I like the miniatures. I think the components are nice. There's just way too much die rolling and making these poker hands out of the dice that it just gets monotonous. It's just non-stop, just rolling the dice, putting the hands together. The characters, you know, you blow up the law bots, but the characters don't get hurt. They just get pushed around or get thrown off the train. The character abilities are unbalanced. There's one character where if he wins a showdown with another raider, the raider gets thrown off the train. And that means, you know, they can jump into a showdown on another player's turn if they're in the car, and then if they win, that other player's off the train. So they have the option of coming in on the caboose or rolling dice to try to get on a better car further along. The game design is just a mess. It's just a mess. But I can't say, okay, this game isn't for anybody. If you're looking for a game, no. If you're looking to play a solid game, there's no strategy either. This is what kind of drives you nuts too. It's just, I got 3 actions. I can kind of do this. I can move. I can fight. I can look around for stuff. It gets to the point when you got other players in the same car. It's like, why bother searching? Because they're just gonna block me from searching and trying to get loot. Like, who gets to be the first player? That's all up to the dice too. So every time you start a new round, you're rolling dice, and it is completely conceivable that one player will never have an opportunity to go first. They always go last. Anyway, so I like the miniatures. I think the components are cool. I think the game itself is kind of a disaster, really. I'm giving Rail Raiders Infinite a 4 out of 10. And it's really, that score is really being propped up. Well, let's say 4.5 out of 10. And it's really being propped up by the miniatures. I mean, that's really what's only giving this game that high a score, is because the miniatures are really cool. So, if you are a fan of chibi-style minis, and you want to get your hands on some pretty cool minis, if you can find this game online at a pretty steep discount, then I would recommend, yeah, if you like painting this stuff up, by all means, pick it up. It's got an MSRP of $59.95, so at that price, I don't know. I don't know if I could personally recommend picking it up just for the minis. Russell Higgins says, oh wow, that's high. Yeah, it's a 1 to 10 scale though. So yeah, 4.5. Yeah, 4.5 out of 10. It means I can't recommend the game. Usually average games that don't bring anything new to the table, but that are just okay, those usually get about a 6. Because there's kind of a bell curve that we use at the Gaming Gang as far as our reviews. So it's pretty tough for a game to get like a 0 or a 1. And it's pretty tough for a game to get that rarefied 10. So yeah, yeah, I mean, just sorry, Russell, if you don't agree. I just like the minis, but I'm still not recommending the game. I'm just recommending the minis. And unfortunately, I'm sure that folks at Soda Pop won't be too thrilled. They'll be like, F that guy, Jeff. Yeah, F that guy. Sorry, I call it as I see it. So that is it. That is my review of Rail Raiders Infinite. So, anyhow, can't give it a thumbs up. All I can say is if you like the minis, if you like that style of miniatures, you maybe, if you get it at a steep discount, take a peek. What I can't believe is this pulled in like $330,000, a little more than that, I think, on Kickstarter. Are the chibi style minis that popular? I don't know. I have no idea. All right, so that is it for today's show. As I mentioned, on tomorrow's show, I will be reviewing Darkest Night from Victory Point Games, designed by Jeremy Leonard. And thankfully, it is a much better game than the debacle known as Rail Raiders Infinite. All right, so when you're not watching the Daily Dope, be sure to go visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And I will be back tomorrow. So until then, thank you so much for watching and enjoy your Monday.